So a quick bit on my electric system. I scrambled for a couple of weeks to get this put together for a trip I got back from last week. And I videoed a bunch of it and then managed to lose the SD card like an idiot, so this is what I got left. Here's the two batteries, wired up in series, connected up into the system via this big fuse and the shunt. There's my solar charge controller, my DC to DC charger, which I don't have hooked up yet. There's the Lynx power in. I'm not using that leftmost piece because I stupidly, in haste, managed to cross thread that bolt with a nut and I can't use it. So I've got to take all this out and disassemble that whole thing and get that main plate out so I can get that bolt out and replace it and put it all back together. Shouldn't be that big of a issue, but it's still annoying. But while I was on my trip, I took my solar panels along with me in the boxes and I set them up basically just like this, just to test. I'm just making sure that everything's working okay. Got those wired in series and then connected up into this DC breaker, which then connects with all that extra cable over to the solar charge controller. This whole janky temporary control panel is going to be at the top of this right here. That's going to be floor to ceiling, and it's going to be right here facing this way. So that's why I've got all that extra cable, so that when I run it, I can trim and I don't have to replace anything. So right now, I'm getting all of 60 watts. Not too much. I waited too late in the day to get the good amount of power. That was the wind slamming my back door. But everything else worked great. The fridge worked great the whole time. Here's a trick. This wire got pulled out because I stepped on it. These Dometic cooler fridges come with a cigarette lighter plug, but you can unscrew it and get to the blades that go into the other piece and connect it up more directly than having a cigarette lighter plug. So if you've got one of these, check your plug and see if you can do that. And then the inverter was working fine. This huge cable right here, the big white one, is a 6.3 marine grade going into this fuse panel. And then that's connected up with this breaker to this GFCI plug. And that worked great with the induction cooktop, and I had a heat gun that I'd just turn on just to test to make sure everything was working. And I wired a few small things up to this fuse panel, like these lamps. I've got a switch right here. Let's see. Yeah, and all those come on. Just connected with these Wago connectors, which are really handy for temporary installations. I wired up a dual USB port there. And then the fans, both fans are wired up. Where's that control? There it is. These fans came very much in handy a little over a week ago when I was outside of Amarillo, Texas at a campground by a lake. Pulled up, great spot right near the lake. Open up the side door and billions of flies fly into my van and decide to stay. And I ended up closing the door, taking the screens off so it was open to the outside, turned both of these fans to blow out at about 50%, And I just let it sit for hours, and eventually almost all these flies wandered over and straight up. Sometimes you would hear a bop as they hit the fan. Slightly satisfying. Other than that, the trip went well. The bed functioned just fine. The mattress is super comfortable. I've got my Seahead toilet, and that did the job. Haven't used the composting side of it yet. Just the sitting down, peeing into the gallon jug, which is just fine. That's actually, I like it better than the Nature's Head having its own separate container that's custom. If it breaks, you're kind of, well, you're not shit out of luck, but you're maybe pee out of luck. But the thing is, you can replace that. If that gallon jug gets nasty, which it will, you can just replace it. Go get another gallon jug of water, empty it out, use it. Much easier. And then the next tasks for the interior are to finish doing kill mat around these windows now that I've got the windows in, and I can start putting Thinsulate up. And I've still got to address a couple of small leaks in the ceiling. I still have one right up there, right in that corner. I've got one right here, and I think that's it. If I can get those taken care of, then I can finish insulating the ceilings and start really working on the interior. And then there's the matter of the partition. I just got a little sheet of remnant fabric from Michael's that I've got held up with magnets to cover my cut through. But I've been working on getting all these rivets popped out, ground out. I've got a chisel I'm going to work on these with. And I just pulled the Dynamat back with a screwdriver, just shoving it in there and peeling it back to get access to those rivets. So hopefully I can get this thing out pretty soon. And that will free up a path for running a wire from the DC to DC charger along the floor and then into the driver's seat, into that pedestal. There's a rubber boot in the bottom that allows a pass through of a bunch of electric wires to go to the engine compartment. And I'm going to follow that to run it to a little fuse box on the positive terminal of the battery. And that will be working. Let us see what we're doing here. Yeah, it's still not a lot, but it's working, and that's the main thing. Another thing I did on my trip was I got my shore power wired up. So I've got this plug going into a plug in the garage. Let's get some light in here. And of course I've got the bed sticking out, so it's a pain in the butt to reach the inverter, but I will persevere. So I'm going to flip the inverter on, the inverter charger, and we're going to see what kind of power we get. Should get about 60 amps coming in just off the plug. Waiting on that other click. There it is. $80 amps. Let's check the shunt. $85 amps coming in. And then we're going to check the battery app. 2 batteries, both connected via Bluetooth to my phone. 46 amps going into that one. 41 into that one. Now, despite it saying 99%, 100%, they are not. The the state of charge on these things got reset somehow a few days ago, and I'm not sure what's going on with that, but that's okay. One of the things on my trip when I tried hooking this up for the first time to a plug, I hooked it up to a 30 amp plug for a couple of minutes just to test it, but when I was partway through my trip, I stopped at a brewery. They had a plug on the outside wall of the brewery, and they let me plug it up. And my number one battery, the B1, this fourth cell was spiking up to 3.65 or 3.56 and constantly burning off extra to balance it. And that was not good behavior. So when I got home, I took the batteries out and checked the insides, all the connections on the insides, and those were all good. What I found when I was taking the batteries out was that this positive line going into the fuse was a little bit loose. It wasn't tight. It wasn't near as tight as it should be. So when I put everything back in, I made doubly sure everything was really tight. I don't know if it came loose from travel or I just didn't tighten it down very well. But yeah, it's a thing to double check all your connections. Every now and again, go back and tighten everything back up. But now we can see that those voltages are good on B1. And they're good on B2. And the thing is, I haven't charged this thing up full since I used my benchtop power supply months ago, so I want to see if this thing levels out like it should. So I'm going to sit here and watch this for a while. I do have a revision for the bed in mind. It works, but it's still annoying. One of the annoying issues of this bed design is I have to get up on top of it and pull this up and strap both of those sides down to hold it up and then push it all the way back to get the full use of the space forward. And I was wondering if there's a way to find a good spot to mount a post that would pivot and let this part down, or when the front of it's being pushed back, to lift this up. That's what this little piece is for. I'd gotten. I'm not gonna put it all the way up. I'll share a couple photos that I already took. But there's that little piece of green tape right there. And that was my estimated pivot point. Let's see if I can get this in there. So if I could get things attached about this angle, there'd be enough of an angle, I hope, that pushing from the front would cause the whole bed to rotate up. And I'll share a little bit of a clip of a video I took at a van meetup where a woman had a van. She'd bought it used, but the builder had done exactly that sort of thing, except with an added mechanical component to it to pull the whole bed forward. But the back of it wasn't mechanical at all. It was just on a lever. So I took some measurements while I was there. Now the trick is, my sliders are mounted. My sliders are mounted on these pieces of aluminum that run all the way to the front. These are 3-foot pieces. And I was hoping I could find 4-foot pieces to go back to this piece and a little bit farther, about another 3 inches. And of course, that's too much. So I've got some 5-foot pieces on order. I'm going to replace these 2 pieces. And then I'm also going to add a center one. I'm going to get a couple more sliders just to give it a little more support. But with that aluminum flat bar coming out to, let's see, I'm going to have it come out to about right here, about 3 inches past this, and that's what I will attach that lever piece to. And I've got a nice little piece of scrap aluminum that if I cut that in half, it's going to be about the perfect size. And then I'll just have to figure out a way to attach it to the flat bar and attach it to the extruded aluminum where it will pivot. And that shouldn't be too big of an issue. And I hope that works, because that way I could put the bed up and take it down from the inside without having to jump up on it and wrestle with it. Just pull it out, push it back. No electronics, nothing, fewer points of failure. That's the idea. Another handy acquisition for the van is this 110 volt fridge. This is one of the 2 door ones, so it's got a separate freezer compartment and a good bit of space in here. And I like the way this door is configured, especially this little section right here. So this is going to run off my inverter 24/7. I'm going to have plenty of power, so that shouldn't be a worry. The only issue I had with it was, how am I going to secure this thing in the van? Because most of the 12 volt fridges have flanges and mounting points. So what I think I'm going to have to do is use the feet. Unscrew the feet and set up some rails that go through or go across the bottom with holes and put the feet back in, and then secure those rails on either side to the cabinet frame, and that should keep it pretty steady. And then build the top over the top and just put some foam or piece of insulation on top to bridge that gap to keep that thing from rattling around. I got this thing for half price. It was slightly used by someone in the neighborhood. They advertised it on Facebook Marketplace. I went, checked it out, liked it. Weren't any stickers on the front. It was the black face, which I wanted, so this is perfect. So I got a good deal on it.